Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Tonight's top story. Belgium is preparing to officially recognize the State of Palestine at the upcoming United Nations General Assembly. This move comes at a critical juncture, as the war in Gaza continues to exact a heavy toll and diplomatic pressure mounts across Europe and beyond. Belgian Foreign Minister Maxime announced on September 1, 2025, that Belgium will recognize Palestinian statehood during the UN General Assembly, scheduled to begin next month. However, this recognition is conditional, set to take effect only once two key prerequisites are met: the release of the last remaining Israeli hostages and the removal of Hamas from power in Gaza. In tandem with this recognition, Belgium plans to impose a series of 12 sanctions on Israel. These include bans on imports from Israeli settlements, a review or potential suspension of public procurement contracts with Israeli companies, restrictions on air transit, and declarations of persona non grata for extremist ministers, settler agitators, and Hamas leadership. This diplomatic push positions Belgium alongside a growing cohort of Western nations, namely France, the United Kingdom, Canada, and Australia, as they publicly express support for Palestinian statehood. In fact, France will lead the pack as the first G7 nation to recognize a Palestinian state at the same UN session. Palestinian officials, including Hussam Zomlet, head of the Palestinian mission in London, see this wave of recognition as a potential catalyst for a revived peace process. Zomlet commented that such recognition by Western powers could trigger swift progress toward a two-state solution. He underscored the symbolic and historical significance of Britain's involvement, given its legacy role in the region via the 1917 Balfour Declaration. Belgium's course is deeply entwined with the broader context of the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. The Guardian estimates that more than 63,000 Palestinians have been killed and over 160,000 injured since October 2023. Civilians, including children, have continued to suffer, with recent airstrikes targeting those even in so-called safe zones. While famine and displacement mount, this grave situation has led not only to mounting international condemnation, but also to legal pressure. Belgium's decision aligns, intentionally or not, with a growing consensus, including a 2024 ruling by the UN's top court that deemed Israel's occupation of Palestinian territories and settlement activity illegal. Yet, the move has not escaped significant criticism. Israeli officials have strongly rebuked Belgium's decision. Israel's National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir blasted the move. At the same time, Israel continues to push its advocacy, with reports suggesting consideration of annexing portions of the West Bank, even up to 60%. As recognition efforts pick up pace domestically, Belgium's decision reflects a shifting political landscape. Although the coalition government includes parties with differing views, such as the more cautious stance of Francophone Liberal MR, support from figures like Deputy Prime Minister Caroline Genez of Verret, whose calls for immediate recognition have been vocal, signals a growing consensus. Genez has asserted that a full-fledged Palestinian state is the only path toward peace and security. For both Palestinians and Israelis, this shift was preceded by months of internal debate. In July, Foreign Minister announced his intention to propose a Belgian government position ahead of the UN session, responding to mobilization by France and the Franco-Saudi diplomatic dynamic. Earlier this year, internal divisions prevented earlier action. Liberal parties remained hesitant, but the trajectory clearly favored increased alignment with other European supporters of Palestinian recognition globally. Belgium is far from alone. More than 140 UN member states already recognize Palestine. Countries like Spain, Ireland, Sweden, Norway, Malta, Slovenia, and the Czech Republic have led early EU recognition efforts. Belgium's move now reinforces this trend among key Western allies. Still, some countries remain reticent, including Germany and Italy, demonstrating that the EU is far from unified on this matter. Belgium's call for EU-level measures is also notable. Urged suspension of the EU-Israel Association Agreement in solidarity with his government's stance. To recap, Belgium's announcement September 1, 2025 to recognize Palestinian statehood at the UN General Assembly, subject to conditional release of hostages and Hamas removal from power, marks a significant diplomatic development. Accompanied by sanctions, it places Belgium in growing alignment with key Western partners, seeking to assert international pressure in response to Gaza's humanitarian catastrophe. Looking ahead, can such diplomatic moves propel the stalled two-state solution forward? Will they generate sufficient leverage on Israel to halt settlement expansion and violence? Or will Israel double down on annexation as a countermeasure? Will internal Belgian and EU dynamics maintain momentum, or stall under domestic or geopolitical pressure? Belgium's decision clearly adds weight to the international discourse, raising both the stakes and the urgency for a durable solution in the Middle East.